We're back with more college football coverage, and in this one, I will be covering the Week 12 action that I tuned into. So to get things started, we have number 11 Oklahoma at number 4 Alabama in the 3:30 slot. And man, the Stormin Norman Oklahoma Sooners would find themselves in yet another game where they'd be facing off against this Crimson Tide team in a high-stakes sort of context here. Granted, Oklahoma themselves, they've had a pretty solid season compared to last year, but if they went into this and lost, they were very much in danger of being completely eliminated from CFP contention. So winning this one would be important for them to stay alive. However, when you only look back at last year, that's as far back as you need to go. They did it before. No one was expecting them to, especially with what they put out onto the field and just how depleted they were as a team by the time they got in that specific game. But what did they do? They beat Alabama by 21 points in Norman last year to derail Alabama's chances of getting in the college football playoff. Now, there's a bit of a different story here. Alabama coming into this game was rolling. That's all you have to say there, really. Riding high on 8 straight wins after the Florida State loss. Todd Simpson's out here is one of the top Heisman candidates. And that defense is looking like the absolute real deal. It was going to be a dogfight. And even when it came down to predicting the games, I was saying the whole time, you could go 50-50 with this either way. But you could not count out Oklahoma completely. They literally did it before last season, and you could say they have a bit of a stronger team now. Minus R. Mason Thomas, who would be out with injury. Still, even with that in mind, no R. Mason Thomas. And absolutely no problem. Alabama was quiet on that front. Very, very quiet. They could not establish the run game at all and forced them on critical third downs to be far out of position, getting in the most difficult spots imaginable in those situations. And once you took that away, you saw Alabama just completely struggle. Now, Oklahoma's offense themselves would take a little bit of time to figure it out, but with them already having a short field to work with after a damn great Isaiah Satania III return, they got themselves on the board. So they had the advantage there. But it just kept on going. Not only with those guys, with this Lewis kid, all the attention that's going to R. Mason Thomas, this guy on Oklahoma is an absolute monster. Like, yet another game for him where you just saw him getting in the backfield, making exceptional tackles out in space. He was pressuring Todd Simpson the whole time. At no point whenever he was in his vicinity did he ever feel comfortable. Shit was wild. That is just not something that you can teach. And the fact that you have that going on for Oklahoma at supposedly a disadvantage here in terms of strength, they're still hooking on the defensive side. Not only would they force Alabama into a 3-and-out, but they would break their hearts on this drive. This was actually promising. Just had Jeremy Bernard cook up over the middle at multiple points to pick up first downs on this drive, and they got a few decent runs from Hill Jr. I think later on in the game, broadcast actually mentioned that, maybe he has now taken the lead back role over from Jam Miller. And when you look at it, it's not very hard to see why that is. he's just been getting a little more attention as of late. And I really don't know why that is. I'm not sure what exactly went into it. But it's kind of unfortunate for Jan Miller in a way. Like, I'm pretty sure he's a senior, and he's probably eligible for the NFL draft. So you'd think this would be a year for him where he'd want to put out some good tape on film for others to look into. And the less and less touches that he gets, it's going to be harder to do that. So I don't know. But, maybe down the line, Hill Jr. can truly prove himself to be great in Alabama's system. That's all came before disaster. Absolute disaster, though. Now, yes, they would not, like this graphic said, go on their first 3 drives, resulting in 3 and outs since 2016. But they would get something completely worse than that. Because the play before saw Hill Jr. actually get the ball knocked out of his hands. And while the Oklahoma defender made a great play, this other backer in McKenzie just let it roll right on out of bounds with a chance to clearly recover it. And that allowed the Crimson Tide to extend their drive for just a second. You can't make it up. The next play saw Todd Simpson get absolutely worked by Bowen for a pick 6. And the Sooners would go up 10-0 from there. They zapped every single ounce of life out of that stadium with that play. But the good thing about those, they're tragic, right? At the very least, you get a chance to get the ball back. It's early in the game. Could be inconsequential if you get your stuff together. You have a chance to go right back out there and respond, which is exactly what the Crimson Tide would do. It would take some work, but before you knew it, Hill Jr. would get himself in the end zone for a touchdown. Because, hey, there you go. However, oh boy. Even when they would make some good progress, the turnovers wouldn't stop. And this is where the game would come down to for Alabama here. You force the 3 and outs yourselves with your formidable front 7 getting to some work and ensuring that everything's knocked up on the back end. Okay, you did your job. Ryan Williams did what? For whatever reason, Ryan Williams is definitely a great and dynamic receiver, but there are some instances where it's just more convenient to just value protecting the ball and protecting yourself in as little of a space as possible. He doesn't have much room after he gets this catch, but he tries to find any sort of avenue to cut into, and he's making all these different moves and everything. Eventually, one of these Oklahoma defenders in Hardy actually punches the ball out. And Amasigo recovered it to give them another short field. And in just a matter of 2 fucking plays, you had John Mateer busted up the middle for a 20-yard touchdown run. Insanity. Insanity, man. Like how? How, dude? You just can't have that shit. You can't. But even then, the Crimson Tide were still not completely out of it. Ryan Williams instantly redeemed himself, getting in a great haul with a safety completely draped over his back, 38 yards down the field, and that would eventually lead to Todd Simpson finding Josh Cuevas, who actually had himself a hell of a night. I think they mentioned that he set his career high in FBS play as a former player for Cal Poly in terms of receptions and I think yards. Pretty damn crazy, to say the least, for him. He would haul in a 25-yard catch, just legitimately getting in a soft spot in the zone and housing it from there. Wild. Wild, to say the least. The Crimson Tide, again, whenever, and this is the thing too, whenever they had Oklahoma backed up, they couldn't do much of anything. But a failure to respond consistently enough, and again, giving them free possessions in terms of field position in their favor, would ultimately come back to bite them, even if this game ended up being close towards the tail end. They tried to chip away, get some momentum back for the home crowd with this last possession, but you had Pulte get his kick blocked. And thus, the Sooners would be up 17-14 at the end of the half. Man. The Sooners were definitely cruising right now. They were certainly in cruise control. But eventually, if they wanted a chance to win, the sentiment could have been that you need to try to finish off longer drives. Grind out as much clock as imaginable against an Alabama offense that can definitely heat up in no time. Like, you've already gotten this advantage in turnover margin, yet this is still a one-possession ball game. Extend that in the best way you can, right? No. Even with this solid drive here, Keon Sabb would get a cool blitz on John Mateer, absolutely from the rafters, all right? And that would force a deep field goal from Sandel, which is no problem for this man. Literally just cashes in a 52-yard field goal like it's nothing. Like it's absolutely nothing. The Crimson Tide, though, would manage to take the lead, just getting chunks of 20-yard gains down the field. That is the identity of their offense under Todd Simpson right now. And that just wouldn't stop. Every moment, a 28-yard run by Hill, or a 20-yard catch by Cuevas, or Horton getting a fucking strike from Simpson from 26 yards out. And eventually it would be Hill Jr. to punch it in. It was definitely a defensive stalemate for a few possessions there, as both teams would be forced to settle. Crimson Tide, again, keeping everything short for the Sooners. And when they were backed up completely far down the field, not allowing them to really even make too much of a dent in terms of opponent territory activity. Same thing with the Sooners. I mean, despite that touchdown there, they sped up Todd Simpson completely. And for a player who's definitely garnered a lot of praise this season for his pocket presence and his quick ability to make decisions, I still felt completely rushed. And that's credit to having other guys like Lewis, also like Ween, who will become important in just a second. Making play after play after play to prevent that major shift in momentum. But the job was not finished. They were still down, and their offense was still not contributing all that much. But Ween, on this drive right here, they were already behind schedule as it was. So you have third and incredibly long here, and Todd Simpson was trying to do all this dancing around. Ween was having none of it. Forced a sack, fumble, and one of the Oklahoma defenders recovered that to give the Sooners yet another short field. And what did they proceed to do? They scored a goddamn field goal. Yes, that was a great defensive stand in terms of the Alabama squad here. They were in a goal-to-go situation. It could have gotten drastic for them, but they prevented that. So you're still somewhat in the clear. Maybe? No. Because they kept on bringing the heat. And Venables in third and long situations would very much favor doing those things. That's exactly what happened here. They weren't shying away from it. And they managed to get Simpson there for a 7-yard loss en route to another punt. Oklahoma tried their hardest to at least grind out some clock. And you feel at that point as though maybe this is a little too conservative of an option. I mean, your defense had been playing that well, yes, but to not even bother trying to get into plus territory and having to settle just like that, I don't know, that could prove to be costly. No, it wouldn't be. They put that man through the ringer. Alabama understood the assignment themselves. You get the ball with a little less than half of the time left through the fourth quarter. And this Oklahoma defense has just been absolutely keeping things locked down outside of a handful of plays, all right? You'd already had little success protecting the ball as well. And your best shot in your mind at winning this game would come down to being conservative with it. Running the football, throwing only high percentage throws, that sort of thing. They would settle for that. Taking off an inordinate amount of time in between plays, picking up short gain after short gain. However, when it came down to it and they absolutely needed a play to be made, this Lewis guy, once again, crashed in there like the game wrecker that he has proven to be at this point of time. And he got Simpson behind the line, far behind the line. All of a sudden, you're looking back up, it's 2nd and 21. Damn, okay. They get a huge amount of that yardage back, but you still have 4th and 6 at that point. You have no choice but to go for it. You've already cut into the 2-minute warning. You're already down to 56 seconds at this point. So something's got to give at some point. And this play was a solid one for them. You get Ryan Williams on a curl, and you have him go for said pass. It was there for a brief second. However, Bowen, already having a pick six in this game, would essentially win it with him literally getting his hand in there like this. Just exactly where it would have been thrown to Ryan Williams. And that would end the game for the Sooners as they would pull off the second win against this team for the second year in a row, 23-21 in the Sooners' favor. For the numbers, John Mateer had 138 passing yards on 65.2% completion and a rushing touchdown. They didn't need him to go buck wild crazy on this team. They just needed him to do his job. Do what the game called for. Take what the defense gives you. Don't force anything. And same thing with other skill position players. Just take the physicality as best as you can and match up with Alabama on that front to give yourself a fighting chance. And they more than did that. The numbers won't show you that, but hey, it's fine. Ty Simpson had 326 passing yards on 67% completion and a touchdown and an interception, his second one on the year. While Hill Jr. had 60 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, as a team, Alabama combined for just 80 on 33 carries. Yikes. And for receiving, Josh Cuevas would have 6 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. Jeremy Bernard had 7 receptions for 71 yards. Isaiah Horton had 3 receptions for 56 yards. Ryan Williams had 3 receptions for 45 yards. And Hill Jr. had 5 receptions for 37 yards in this game. So, the win keeps it alive for Oklahoma and definitely gives them one of the stronger resumes in the nation. I would think that even if, things go a certain way in the other couple of games that they have in the remainder of the season, this is a top 5 Alabama team that they just went in Alabama and beat. As Nick Saban was watching from the top ropes, all right? You do have to take those things into consideration if you're the committee. They definitely went through a rough patch, and they would still like to see a little bit of a better performance from that offensive unit with how much they were advertised to be great in the offseason. But if this defense is coming as advertised, you're going to consistently have opportunities to win the game. And they gave themselves that by literally taking the ball away 3 times and the offense not even turning it over once. Insanity. As for Alabama, this would be significant as it was the first time in 24 years that they would lose a homecoming game. And that is tough for Alabama brass to handle. But in all seriousness, while this is a tough one to get at the same time, the way the SEC works, man, teams are just going to consistently beat up on each other. That's how it goes. Alabama still has a path to the CFP themselves, but they are definitely treading very lightly. They're going to have to, at least. You can't really afford too many more mistakes or you're out. But I would expect, as of this recording, CFP selection, or at least updated rankings for this particular week, haven't come out yet. It would be interesting to see where they fall exactly. Obviously, AP poll is a whole different story. But, yeah. They will probably slide in like the latter half of 10. I don't expect them to place lower than 8th, maybe. That's just a wild guess I'll throw out there. We'll see what happens. All right. Moving on to number 1. Ohio State versus UCLA. Oh, man. Damn. The moment that had been in the making for so long, man. Nico and this UCLA team. They had to come home. They had to come home and deal with the big dogs again. It was a rough go for Amaliava last time. But just maybe he could get something done here. Or maybe things would be repeated in the same way they were last year. Before we even got around to any of that, on the day of the game, they say that Nico was dealing with a concussion and would not appear in said game. Nico! There's nothing you can do about a concussion. He was there to watch his team play, but he would not appear in it, unfortunately. One could say that he was avoiding the inevitable. But in all seriousness, you would hope that he does heal up from that concussion and is able to play at some point down the line again this season. Genuinely. Like, you don't want to see anybody get hurt. So that's just what it is. You could say, and it would be obvious to say, that UCLA would be at a disadvantage regardless. But now you're coming in with a completely different quarterback here. And I believe this guy has a freshman classification. Had not seen the field a whole bunch this season to this point. So on short notice, you were asking this man to come in and try his absolute hardest to pitch a good game against the top team in the nation. And honestly, on his side, I mean, I would think that it went about how one would expect. You know, this was just through and through a game dominated by Ohio State. Don't get it twisted. They would win this game 48-10. You know, I could go through and do the whole spiel and everything there. I'll definitely touch on a few key points there in a second, of course. But I will give UCLA their attention. I can't deny that. He played fine. And the team, honestly, they had pockets of decent play here. They were severely limited in the fact that their main running backs in this Thomas Person and Berger as well were limited to a combined 13 carries for 30 yards. That is where the strength of their team currently is. And the fact that they were not able to generate that, yes, the Ohio State defense is obviously great, but that definitely left them in an even more vulnerable position. Because now you're putting the onus on this Duncan person to go out there and grind out some solid drives. And honestly, they weren't that bad. I guarantee you that UCLA would have a much better fight against any other team. This was just not the night. It is as simple as that. Like, I don't know. He protected the ball. And granted, that could also kind of tie into how conservative and limited they were keeping the game for the man. But not bad at all. I mean, even with that being said, he managed to get himself a 51-yard pass down the field. Granted, against a few backups here and there. And would eventually throw a touchdown pass. That would really be it for UCLA. At least on the offensive side. Like Ohio State, as advertised. I mean, there isn't really much that I can say about that. Like, it would just be ridiculous to sit here and go through the entire thing and just, I don't know, try to explain that. Because that would just be me being completely one-sided, even though this was a one-sided game. And that just wouldn't make any sense. I mean, you saw it all. You had this man, Jeremiah Smith, literally come out here, first damn target, getting a fucking one-handed catch in. At that point, you knew. Bo Jackson Jr. continues to do really great work for this team as well. Had 15 rushes for 112 yards by himself and a touchdown. And most of the scoring for Ohio State came on the ground. They combined for 222 rushing yards as a team, their most this season against the Power 4 opponent. Pretty crazy. But I will say, if you're finding that kind of rhythm there now, that helps, especially when you are getting closer and closer to CFP play. That'll definitely help out a lot. Julian Sain in this game as well. Things came a little more... Well, I shouldn't say that. You got a little bit of a mixed bag in this one. And it does kind of have to do with Carnell Tate missing his second game. I didn't even know he was out for multiple games in a row. But that is all fine. Nevertheless, some of the other receivers on this team definitely had a few solid plays earlier on. And you also had this person, Rodgers, get an 11-yard touchdown catch off of a 4th and 5 that I will admit, to UCLA's credit, that probably should have been overturned into an incomplete pass. It clearly hits the ground. They were looking at it for ages. I don't know what went into their minds there. They absolutely fucked up on that part. I will say that. But nonetheless, you had that to Rodgers. And at that point, the Buckeyes are up 27-0 at the end of the half after a block punt. This technically wasn't even a block punt as well, to Ohio State's credit. It literally shanks off the punter's foot, and it goes right into the body of Caden Curry. He didn't even have to really try to make too much of an effort to block it. He kicked it right to him. Here you go. And that led to more points for Ohio State. That's just not something you can do. Like, what can I say? Even though the Buckeyes would have some solid drops to cap off the game, including one where they didn't even have to see the field. Following this touchdown scored by UCLA, Lorenzo Styles Jr., the nickelback himself, would manage to get in a 100-yard kickoff return. Damn. That is just, oh man. At that point, yeah. It was a wrap right there. But in all seriousness, they hit a little bit of a rut, if you could say that. Yeah, that seems pretty interesting. Just because Sain got near 10 incompletions in this game. But genuinely, these are not players that he would spend a lot of time with. The chemistry wouldn't be there always and consistently. And you definitely saw that in this game. Now, again, it's wide receiver U for a reason. Those guys over Tom, as they get more opportunities, could eventually become really good. But, again, given the injury there and asking them to come in this situation, definitely were or would have a few drawbacks at times. Definitely wasn't enough to really slow them down. And you could say that winning this game by 38 points, at the end of the day, they could afford to do it. So from that standpoint, just a calm, cool win for Ohio State here. Not the worst game remotely from this UCLA squad. Worse could have happened here, believe me. Even with the block punt in line. In fact, neither team was able to force a turnover in this game. Neither team. So, you just got a good, clean ball game and a good, clean... Damn. Nico! Come on, bro. Damn. Just damn. And to think that took place in the Ohio State game. Who would have thought that, oh boy, like, man, moving on to number 10 Texas at number 5 Georgia right now. Who would have thought, oh, good. Who would have thought that this would happen? Now, yes, niggas can joke around and say, oh, Texas is a trash team. We knew this was coming from a mile away. No, the fuck you didn't. No, the fuck you didn't. This was very insightful to watch. And I will just say this as well. You know, I'll do my best to cover it. But when you look at everything, when you watch the game, when you hear it being talked about, if people still believe that Texas is going to have a shot at the CFP, just can it. Because, believe me, they'll still be ranked. It's Texas. And this Georgia team is also that damn good. They're number 5 for a reason, as of the recording of this video, right? They're that damn good. So it's going to go down as a good loss, I would say, if we're using that criteria, okay? But this looked like a complete and total mismatch. And the fact that the game ended this way, Texas couldn't even at any one point of time make it that convincing, really. And you get this as the end result. They got dominated. They got dominated and kicked out of this place. Shit. Like, Texas, I mean, solid first drive. They got a solid 4th down conversion from C.J. Baxter Jr. here. They were rolling down the field. And while they would settle for a field goal, it's like, okay, you're getting something established here. You were able to get down that far, and you were able to strike first. Seems fair enough. Only, they were just terrible defensively. They mentioned that Michael Taffy was coming back in this lineup after dealing with a thumb injury, the same injury that Ryan Wingo was dealing with, and even his presence could not stop them from getting carved up by this Nate Thomas receiver for Georgia. Back-to-back drives. Gets in some clean routes in the red zone and manages to cap them both off with touchdown scores. Was already a pain having to game plan for Nate Frazier Jr. after the game that he had last week against Mississippi State. But now you had to deal with this person. Like, okay. Already up 14-3 at that point. And honestly, the thing about Texas is that some of the decisions by Arch Manning here were not really all that bad. Not really. Yes, there were some head-scratching ones. But it gets to a point where if you're not going to surround him with enough help, of course, he's going to face things like this. I mean, how is it that you get in a situation where there are great plays being made? So much so that even early penalties in this drive could not stop Emmanuel Mosley V for getting in some great work after the catch to essentially erase the penalty yardage entirely and get all the way down to the 44-yard line. yet they still go 3-0. Wild. And the defense, to their credit, while it was difficult to say that they controlled the flow of the game, at the very least, they kept Georgia at bay for as long as they could. We're talking about up to halftime, them forcing 3 straight punts. And even when Georgia was slightly able to move the ball, with Oscar Delp getting a 23-yard gain starting on this final drive here, it still clamped down when it needed to. You still had Colin Simmons getting back there and wrecking the game like he typically does. Yet, somehow, even as an established pass rusher, he's not even getting that much attention like that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But his contributions and all others from Texas at that point kept UGA scoreless for the rest of the first half. Too bad that offense couldn't answer when it counted. And they had some pretty good opportunities too. I mean, you just cannot make up driving all the way down the field like this. And while some of these catches gained a good amount of yardage, when they got near the red zone, they completely crumbled in this situation. This would go down as a pretty errant decision because it just ends right up in Bolden's hands, the Georgia defender. That is just not something that can happen. Man. Like to think that Livingstone, quite literally the play before, had a good shot at catching this ball, put it on the ground, and then Arch Manning just completely misses him. Like that's kind of the BS right there. They would also go 3-and-out and then have to settle for ending the half because not even a few seconds after this snap on this final possession in the first half, he's getting buried in the backfield. And you've already lost enough yardage at that point. He was at his own 7-yard line. There's no point of running any more plays. 14-3 ball game. Not necessarily out of reach for the Longhorns, but they certainly were not putting forth the contributions they needed to take control of the game. They just weren't. And oh boy. I mean, I will say the defense continued their efforts in the third quarter. When you look at it, their only efforts, Georgia, that took place in the third quarter and ended in the third quarter were 3-and-out to open the half after having an opportunity to take this all the way to the max by taking a potential 3-possession lead here. Instead, that wouldn't happen. They also forced Gunnar Stockton in just a pretty good work by Hill Jr. on this Texas team, the linebacker. Great play to bait Stockton into that one because the tight end otherwise was going to be wide open. But he got in the proper space at the right moment, made the play, and gave Texas a short field to work with. And while Texas had struggled earlier on in this half themselves, at least were able to respond with the easier field position. It was mostly Ryan Wingo, and he promptly would end the drive, getting in a 7-yard touchdown catch in the back of the end zone to make this a 4-point ball game. But that's when the turns completely fucking table for this Texas team. I mean, sequence number 1, or multiple plays in sequence number 1. Why is it that at every single pivotal moment in this ensuing Georgia drive that bled into the start of the fourth quarter could they not get a stop to save their lives? You get them in multiple fourth down situations, and they convert them with ease. Because, one, you don't get outside contain and just allow madness to take place out there. And then, two, Simmons had been having a really good game up until he decided to be an idiot on this play and jump off sides. And there was a different penalty somewhere, I think. Shit like that. Getting undisciplined at the worst moments of time. And what did that end up leading to? This Humphreys guy. Pretty solid wide receiver. Nobody's out in space to account for him on that area of the field. And he just streaks down there for a free 30-yard touchdown catch. And this moment right here, and what would happen afterwards is how I knew that this game was finito. Sarkisian got. Yes, the players have to go out there and execute, and there's no excuse for them getting gashed like this after this play. But I'm putting this situation on Sarkisian. His ass allowed his team to give up an onside kick early in the fourth quarter for the Bulldogs to steal back a possession, trying to go for a 2-for-1, and they got the fucking 2-for-1, just gushing the fucking ball down the field up until Lawson Lucky, who they had done a short profile on game day, promptly scoring a touchdown. And given what the content of the profile story was, okay, that's pretty fitting for him. Gotta respect him being able to go out there and score in front of his mother and brother in the stands. More power to him. But if you're Texas, damn, that's demoralizing. You think it's all good. Okay, we're going to go out. We're going to respond by getting this ball back. And you don't even see the fucking ball. Literally, they last touched it on the kickoff at 5:27. And they had to wait all the way until 8 minutes and 53 seconds in the fourth quarter to see the field again. It's damn. And to think that last year, Sarkisian was in a similar situation where he got an onside kick snuck right up under him that changed the complexion of the same game from last year. He didn't think to at least have that in the back of his mind. No, you're not expecting Kirby Smart to deploy that so early in the fourth quarter, and that's the point, obviously. But it's just, man, those are situations where you need to be better prepared. And that put it all out there that they clearly were not. They weren't. And you think that your offense was going to go back out there after cooling down and still struggling to do any kind of offensive work when backed up in their own territory like this. And they probably went 3-0 here. Georgia at this point was in the driver's seat. Short field after a fairly short punt. And all they had to do was run the football. In went Gunnar Stockton from 4 yards out to give them a 35-10 lead. And at that point, even though Texas would try so hard, they still didn't get any points on the board. Bulldogs would win this game 35-10 at home. Yes, Georgia is also a hostile environment. I get that, but man, all the energy from that team after that onside kick was completely gone. They were doing okay, still missing out on a few moments here But you couldn't look past that if not for the beatdown that ensued afterwards. That's just rough watch if you're a Longhorns fan. Like, I don't know how you can have a game go like that and still try to convince somebody out there that you deserve a shot at playoff football. Again, the SEC is chaos. So, maybe not. You never truly know. But the committee might have other plans. And when you look at it, while they could bounce back next week against Arkansas, they are hedging all of their bets on going. Okay, keep in mind this would be a home game. They are hedging their bets right now, currently, on beating the third-ranked Texas A&M squad on the final day of the regular season for them. That's what they're banking on. That ain't gonna be so easy. If they could do that, if they could do it, you'd have a tough loss, but you'd have a top 3 win. And that could woo a few voters here. Sure. But that is a lot to try to hang your hat on for the tail end of the season. And I just don't know if that's really going to get the job done. As for the numbers, Gunnar Stockton would have 5 total touchdowns on 82.8% completion and 229 yards and an interception. 5 incompletions as well. Pretty solid game for him. Nate Frazier Jr. had 16 rushes for 72 yards to lead their rushers. And for the receivers, London Humphreys had 2 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown. Zachariah Branch had 6 receptions for 41 yards. Oscar Delp had 3 receptions for 36 yards. And Nate Thomas had 4 receptions for 32 yards. As for Arch Manning, 62.8% completion from the field for 251 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. In no universe should Arch Manning be having to throw 43 passing attempts right now. But at the same time, for a Texas team that could typically be balanced, they had 23 rushing yards in this game. That defensive line bottled them up all game. And, of course, you're going to struggle if you're this Texas offense, if you're not getting in third and manageable situations, which it feels like they could rarely do, relying on being so one-dimensional throughout this thing by force. They just were not giving them the rushing lanes that they were looking for. That Georgia team, you want to talk about playing with physicality, man. After a while, they just abandoned this. That's how bad it was. Like, even with Georgia not even being all that efficient in terms of their carries, that didn't stop them from running the football. 17 carries compared to 35. Texas just abandoned that shit. DeAndre Moore Jr. had 5 receptions for 75 yards. Emmanuel Mosley, the 5th, had 3 receptions for 66 yards. Ryan Wingo had 9 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown as well. Brutal game. A great one for Georgia, though. Man. Jeez. And, oh boy. We haven't even scratched the surface there. Moving on to TCU at number 12. BYU at the time in Provo. And like so many people had understood, this game could end up being a truly important one. I mean, you wouldn't want to drop multiple games in a row if you're BYU, but like I mentioned as well, if you're TCU, You had no other choice coming into this game but to try and run the gauntlet. No other choice. If you fail to do that here, your chances of salvaging a potential run this season would be gone like that. And I'm sure that TCU had an idea of what BYU was going to lean into this game. They are not a team, even if they may try to surprise a few people, they are very aware of what their identity is as a football club. Yes, Bachmeier has done the thing a few times, but through him as a runner and also LJ Martin and these other physical receivers on the outside that have their own talents but are also committed to blocking on the perimeter, they are going to run through and over you consistently. Even if you think for a second you might be able to limit their gains, they're not going to stop. It's just going to keep on hammering at you again and again and again. And at that moment, what exactly are you going to do about it? Are you going to respect it enough and commit to it to open up the passing game, or are you just going to keep getting punked on the ground? It's not that TCU themselves also aren't an explosive offense. I mean, dude, their receivers are guys that would certainly have to be game plan for on BYU's end. You let any one of them get going, and the complexity of this becomes completely different if you have to force BYU to go pass for pass. Right? Man, oh man. They mentioned in an early graphic that LJ Martin and Bear Bachmeier still are, by this point, of course, the most prolific Big 12 running back and quarterback duo in terms of total rushing yardage on the ground. And they got right into that bag immediately. Now, yes, you had Parker Kingston get himself open down the field for a 30-yard gain to bring them in TCU territory. But they established an identity early and often. They would be forced to settle for a 52-yard Will Ferrin field goal, which is typical for the man, of course. BYU also has a monster defense, even if there was going to be a little bit of worry pertaining to perimeter matchups here. It didn't feel like it. It did not feel like it. Oh, man, I mean... The Josh Hoover experience. I mean, they mentioned as well, ironically enough, that going back to his debut as a player in college, he faced off against BYU then and went stupid in that game. But with Hoover still being there now, having more experience, and just naturally progressing as a player, same as a few other guys there, this is a totally different TCU team. This is a totally different BYU team. And they just outmanned everybody. Yes, there were a few chunk plays here, but before you knew it, on a pivotal 3rd and long, he gets sacked in the backfield by a pair of defenders to give BYU the ball back. And this was the ultimate disrespect right here. You get them all the way back at the 9-yard line. Good, solid punt. You back them up, and they still drove down the field, doing what they do best, without seemingly any resistance whatsoever. In fact, it got to a point where they rolled out the Parker Kingston sweeps. They always do this. That should be a key play to look out for in the film room. They love getting him out on the perimeter and allowing him to do whatever it is he wants to do after the reception and as he crosses the line of scrimmage. He's that great of a player when it comes to doing this. He's got the speed advantage, and he's relatively large in wide receiver context as well. And he broke through for an 11-yard touchdown run. While BYU continued to severely limit TCU, forcing them into a 3-and-out here, they would go right back marching down the field on another near 6-minute drive as LJ Martin, like a fucking bell cow, just trucks all over him. Up the middle, towards the outside, out of the backfield, catching the ball, stiff arms the fucking man into oblivion and picks up additional yardage that way. Then it's the Bear Bachmeier show, because of course it is. They're settling for a 3rd down run from 13 yards out that, teams in this situation, they'll just run it because they know that it has a low percentage of working. And of all runs, they do an option. This man Bachmeier gets Oyewale, I think it was, this defensive one, actually pretty good player for TCU, gets him out in space. As he's trying to sell the pitch, he pulls that motherfucker back, freezes him up instantly. And by the time that he's in this solitary stance, Bachmeier's already a few yards ahead of him. And he runs into the end zone untouched from 17 yards out for a score. Now, yes, TCU themselves, after a setback with Tanuvasa, one of the BYU defensive linemen, wrecking Hoover in the backfield for a loss, they did actually manage to get a great play to McAllister. 2 for 1, of course. He's that good. 47-yard gain there. They get down the field, they get in goal-to-go territory, and they're stuffed. At the very least, they got on the board, and McCaskill can say that he actually made a field goal from inside 25 yards this week. Okay. 4-play drive. Instantly. And you have this tight end fullback hybrid in Ryan. I don't even know how he's classified as a tight end. I thought this man was a fucking fullback. Runs like a madman with the slowest speed imaginable, still just getting free somehow, some way. And that wouldn't be the only time in this game. But he just creeped right into the end zone from 43 yards out for the score. How? How is that possible? I don't know. But hey, that is the identity working to their advantage. You're running the ball with purpose, so much so that you are still able to sell the pass in a similar formation and have a tight end who would be seen as a blocker usually being able to leak out and make that impactful of a play out in space. While TCU would get some good work to go here with Denman rushing for a 13-yard touchdown after knowing that they were in desperation mode early in this game, it still wouldn't be enough. They were already down 27-10 by the end of this half as Will Farron got this in. And the onslaught just would not end. It wouldn't end. I mean, they did start off the third quarter right with getting themselves on the board with a field goal. But with TCU allowing a long response and then promptly having Hoover in no time get picked off by Satwala, they, from that point on, were full speed ahead the rest of the game. I mean, BYU wasn't even, necessarily trying to run up the score after a while. But you would have LJ Martin get in for a rushing touchdown after yet another situation where this Ryan guy just creeped out in space. And then after multiple 3-and-outs, TCU would get a little bit of good fortune with, I guess, one of the backup skill position players. Not too familiar with who Shirts is. Nevertheless, he would fumble. Maybe you can get a drive out of Vanity if you're TCU. Fuck that. Pick six by Wall. And that would cap off the scoring as BYU would win convincingly. This was never in doubt. 44-13. Jeez. So, hey, I mean, yes, TCU's had a struggle this season. Quite the struggle this season. And BYU, coming off a tough loss of their own, they're still pretty legit. And, as long as they win out, man, they have a good shot of getting themselves in the CFP. When you can dictate a game like that, especially when it gets down to situational football in these high-stakes situations that many teams will be in once the CFP comes around, you've got a pretty good shot if you're BYU doing this right now. Bachmeier in this game would have 296 passing yards and 2 total touchdowns on 69.7% completion. LJ Martin had 21 rushes for 88 yards and a touchdown as well. Parker Kingston had 5 receptions for 80 yards. Carson Ryan had 4 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown. Chase Roberts had 5 receptions for 50 yards. And LJ Martin had 4 receptions for 34 yards on the backfield. As for Hoover, man, 183 yards, 2 interceptions, 43.5% completion for him. It's not even necessarily all his fault, but that BYU defense is real. They are monsters over there. It's wild, man. And even with McAllister going off for 107 yards catching in 4 catches here, the fact that only 4 receivers caught a pass in this game, they forced them to completely limit their entire playbook here. Even when they would try to get creative and get outside of the box, BYU was not allowing it whatsoever, man. Just absolute control and domination in this one. And the fact that, hey, that'll do it for the game, actually. I really did think those last 3 games, or last 2, I should say, Texas, Georgia, BYU, TCU, I thought they were going to be far more captivating. But clearly, the teams that were ranked or ranked higher, they put on display exactly why they deserve to have a shot at this thing come the end of the regular season. They showcased exactly why. All 3 phases of the game in both of them tells you everything you got to know about these teams. And sometimes, maybe a resume is going to determine that. But even then, that still may not give you the full tale of the tape here. So, just do with that what you will. There are a few other developments here to get into. So, to get that started, earlier in the week, I guess kind of leading up to the game action, and then also just, I guess, other accompanying reports across the days to follow, Brian Kelly would sue LSU because I believe the language was that they apparently, via his claim here, they weren't truly holding up their end of the deal, and they weren't as willing to actually give him the full buyout contract that he was owed. Simply put, he wants his motherfucking money. He wants his money, man. He is not playing that game. Y'all better give him his money. Holy shit. Goodness gracious, man. Wow. All right. Oh, yeah, I definitely should have gotten more into this. Oh, well, actually, no. Yep. Okay. Next development here. My fault. Michigan State would be forced to vacate all 14 of their wins from the 2022 season to the 2024 season because of Mel fucking Tucker and violations that he had during his coaching tenure. Definitely sucks for the current head coach they have right now, and Jonathan Smith, but that is how the rules typically are. Now, no, I think one of these articles would mention this doesn't relate to the separate SA scandal that Mel Tucker was dealing with that led to his firing in the first place. Different situation entirely. But as the CBS article puts it, quote, the NCAA found that Tucker and his former staff failed to properly oversee the program, resulting in violations involving 3 ineligible players. Investigators determined that staff arranged impermissible recruiting inducements and benefits, covered unofficial visit expenses, and engaged in improper contact with recruits. End quote. It's also worth mentioning that as the Sporting News article puts it somewhere, the 3 players that were found to be involved in this stuff, they are no longer with the team. So, I mean, they are completely cleaning house in that aspect. And part of being able to truly move on from a coaching tenure of that kind sometimes is to blow it all up. With the kind of stuff that goes into investigating these things, it may take a lot longer for some to go down some of these impositions. Definitely seen that in years past with more well-documented incidents, I should say. But slowly but surely, in some of these instances, they will definitely get served their punishment. And this Mel Tucker situation proved to be no different here. Now, as this other quote states, in addition to vacating wins, Michigan State must pay $30,000 plus 1.5% of the football program's budget, which was $58.6 million for the 2024 season, per ESPN. The sanctions also include restrictions on official and unofficial visits, recruiting communications, recruiting person days, and off-campus recruiting contacts and evaluations over the 3-year probation period. End quote. The crux of this thing has to do with recruiting. So, of course, that was bound to happen as well. Because, let's be honest, even though some of these things are ideal, and granted, it doesn't mean a total ban on those things. Like, you still have to go out and you have to acquire talent to play for your team. You have to make contacts with certain people. That's how the process goes. But they will definitely have restricted access to some of the guys that they would probably be looking for in their pipeline, or some of the top guys in the nation that they would be keyed in on through scouting and everything. That's how that would typically end up going. Also, deals. Because you're exploiting that side of it as well. So, now you have to think about NIL being offered, but at a potentially weaker and lower selling point that could, with this advent taking place over the past few years, sway the decisions of a few recruits out there. Definitely possible that happens. And with the 3-year probation in mind, there were also some other things that these officials for the team faced. So as this Sporting News article states, Mel Tucker, was given a 3-year order for failing to satisfactorily monitor or oversee the program. Saeed Khalif, and Brandon Jordan, were given 6- and 5-year orders for knowingly providing impermissible recruiting inducements. End quote. Sweetening the damn deal, man. It wasn't worth it at all, with this Michigan State team still struggling. I mean, ain't that some fucking irony? Like, I just, man, oh man. Like, what's the point at that point? You sold out so hard to make those things happen, and you still do not find relatively promising success with your damn team. Absolutely embarrassing stuff. And again, they probably got their due. All right. Moving on to some different news here. And I had to keep on doubling back, checking out what was happening. But, apparently, if all this is true, UCLA has been playing at the Rose Bowl for ages now. A few of these articles stated they've been doing it since 1982. You don't, UCLA is synonymous with that place. Not to mention, a few of the Seminole Bowl games of the year. That is tradition. That is rich history in college football. And potentially, UCLA's connection with it, per all these reports, seem to be in danger. Gotta go all the way back first, though. As this quote from NBC Los Angeles states, the city and the Rose Bowl operating company sued the university last month, seeking to enforce the terms of a lease agreement they claim locks UCLA into playing football at the venue until 2044. Long ass time from now. But clearly, there is something there. This is on the part of the Rose Bowl themselves doing this, apparently. So, from my standpoint, I would think that this would have to deal with some form of funding if we're talking about a lease agreement. And in terms of a binding contract that one of these entities may have, is there a shortage of money being wrapped up in this? Are they trying to negotiate for more? That could be interesting. That could be very interesting. It's crazy. One would think that from the outside looking in, typically things would be going relatively well between both sides here, but that is far from the case, as these reports state. And, even the attorney representing this company does go on to say this, as this quote from the AP states. Even though he found that there was no immediate emergency, the judge here, Mahebi said, he made very clear in a lot of his statements that there's irreparable harm, that UCLA has an obligation to play at the Rose Bowl through 2044, and we're very confident in our facts of this case. So I think in all, we feel very, very good, end quote. However, with context, the idea of this feeling very, very good, of course, you're going to feel good about this. But UCLA might have some other plans, and this could get ugly. It's not to say that they don't want to be at the Rose Bowl, but with what would happen over the past week, they could feel like they're being forced into just being committed to this when they haven't actually sat down and truly talked this thing out. Now, a week earlier, it was mentioned that UCLA could actually be on the move. As this quote from Alex Weber, an article by him states, via a different sentiment from Tracy Pearson of 247 Sports, UCLA is finalizing the deal for its football program to play its home games in SoFi Stadium, according to multiple sources within the UCLA athletic department, end quote. While it probably shouldn't be considered an absolute certainty, it was described as a near done deal by one source, and many athletic department sources discuss it like it's already been acknowledged and accepted as happening. Using that kind of language for something that is in the works can always get suspicious, but I mean, from UCLA's perspective, they feel like a change could be imminent. And SoFi Stadium is truly a state-of-the-art one. Not to mention, this article here goes on to state just how convenient it would actually be for them to move to SoFi Stadium and hold their home games there. Not just for the players, but for the students at UCLA. So when you run through all of that and just how much revenue that could bring in, it would seem enticing for the Bruins to take that on if this is actually in motion and getting closer and closer to going down. Pasadena and the Rose Bowl have something to say about that. And depending on how they take it, this could get absolutely ugly. Because literally a day or a few days following that going down, end quote, from NBC Los Angeles again, states that a judge Wednesday denied a request by the city of Pasadena and the operators of the Rose Bowl for a temporary restraining order that would bar UCLA's football team from playing its home games at other venues, including SoFi Stadium. End quote. So petty. Like, that was way too fucking fast. Now, yeah, I do understand that if this thing was signed all the way until 2044, well, you're definitely going to want them to continue serving there at least. You're definitely going to want them to continue utilizing your product for as much time as they can. But to put that in writing, that you were trying to bar them from binding to home games anywhere else over this time? Like, shit. You want to talk about fighting words in the legal sense. Even if this was denied. And I guess this is an ongoing situation. So, after this one, definitely whenever I get a chance, definitely have to continue looking into this. Because I would have to imagine that even with this being denied, UCLA, people handling this at UCLA would definitely feel a way about this. Like, that is just, oh man, that is, jeez, bro. Goodness gracious. All right. Well, moving on to some pretty solid news, because it's all coming full circle. You know, hey man, James Franklin obviously fired at Penn State, you know, obviously last month. He'd been sitting around as people have just created rumor after rumor after rumor about where he could potentially end up next. The most desirable head coach in this current cycle, of course. That comes with the territory. But boy, when I tell you, there were some names being thrown out there in terms of colleges that could attract them. We went all over the place. I think actually one of the articles that I read at that point and cited in said video talking about the James Franklin firing, I think that actually ended up mentioning that this school in Blacksburg, Virginia was actually a potential place, destination for James Franklin to be hired at. Man, shit, bro. And what do you know? Sometime last week, the rumors started fucking swirling all over the place that James Franklin and Virginia Tech were talking with each other, per Pete Thamel and per other college football insiders. They mentioned it as well, too, with some added context. If they did not get the shit done by Monday, it was a wrap. They were putting him on a clock. They said, we're trying to get you. We have interest in you. But if you don't commit to us by this date, at this particular time, we're moving on. Because they had other coaches in the running as well that they were trying to look into. And damn, that's bold. Coming from a Virginia Tech team that has been struggling for years, that just fired a man in Brent Prod that was not doing much of anything with this team. But through it all, through conversations that both they, on their end, and James Franklin had together, something materialized because it would be detailed yesterday by Pete Thamel following up his own report and by another CBS sports writer and both Will Backus and Matt Zenitz here. Virginia Tech would hire James Franklin officially. Now, there is no real mention of the contract details right now, but I think the CBS Sports article mentions that the budget for the school increased with the hire. And, I mean, dude, like, it's a hell of a play. You know, they called their fucking shot, and they got the man that they wanted. I'll just put it to you like this. Because numerous reports have said it already. And even I kind of detailed this point in that very same video talking about his firing. Like, maybe at a school that is a blue blood trying to contend for a title, he would not succeed. But at a program like Virginia Tech, where they have been meddling in mediocrity and subpar play for so long, James Franklin is the perfect hire. you want to talk about relevancy. Man, he's going to restore some life to that Virginia Tech football program. You can guarantee that. No, they still may go through ruts in facing off against ranked competition. But that's besides the point. Damn it. In the ACC, they could become a team to watch out for if he handles things accordingly. You know, yes, he's got a bit of a polarizing reputation, but he's got a lot of... I gotta be careful how I say this, huh? His name is already relevant enough to where I can guarantee you that Virginia Tech, even without, and again, that's probably something that I should definitely work on in terms of actually taking a look myself and seeing how different recruiting classes for different colleges rank up. Even without taking a look at anything of that. And that's definitely something that can be worked on my front. I can guarantee you that as they continue to go to work in this offseason, James Franklin, in at least the next 3 years, we're banking on quite a lot of time here, quite a lot of different things that cannot be predicted at this point of time, of course. But in at least the next 3 years, this man is going to put together a recruiting class that will be Virginia Tech's best in at least a couple decades. Yeah, we're gonna say that with emphasis. Let me sit up. Sit up. Say it with my damn chest. In at least the next 3 years, okay, James Franklin is going to have the best recruiting class in Virginia Tech history since at least a couple decades ago. Back when they were riddled with the Michael Vicks, the Tyrod Taylors, and the Cam Chancellors of the world. Since then, and winning above all else, no matter how it comes for them or who they win against, they've got a great chance of that happening. Like, even with Virginia Tech consistently meddling around, this is a program that over the last decade has not logged a 10-win season. Or at least, if I'm not mistaken, let me make sure. Hold on. Yeah, because they have this right here. Yeah, just one 10-win season. While this man, James Franklin himself, over a similar period of time had 6. It's like, dude, yeah. You got that guy. Tremendous work on their part. I have absolutely no complaints about it. They are simply trying to get back to some form of glory and relevancy in this conference, and by goodness, they have a great chance of getting there with them. Oh, also for Texas A&M, they compound on their newfound relevancy, because after an impressive and undefeated start to this season and a chance to contend for a title themselves right now, they seem to think that the Mike Elko hire after Jimbo Fisher was canned is going pretty fucking smoothly. And they would sign him to a 6-year extension on Saturday. He's got a top 5 contract per average salary per year. And it is well deserved. They are a machine right now. Or at least you could have said that before the very first half of the South Carolina game that they had. Because I'm not going to talk about that extensively. I've already done my fair share of commentary on actual games. But man, there was just something about seeing him getting that deal, tracking this game all the way through the end of the first half, and seeing that these niggas were down 30-3 at halftime against South Carolina, without a lot of explosive play on the part of South Carolina. It's not like they were doing that much. It's not like they were that efficient. They were just pummeling them into submission, seemingly. Clearly not enough. And while it's a great win for Texas A&M to go out and get 4 consecutive and unanswered touchdown scores in the second half to win that game, like, that says a lot about how Elko's got this team when it comes to mindset and everything. It's crazy to see. But if you are South Carolina, I'm just like, yeah, you're disappointed as fucking this. Like, there's no way that you blow that. There's no way. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.